Hello and good morning and welcome to Friday, June 27th episode. I'm your host, Joanna Works, and I'm recording this a little early because I have plans this weekend. Um, anyway, on Wednesday, we covered the second chapter in the book that I'm reading. It's kind of like a book club sort of thing, where I just read some highlighted portions and comment as we go, and maybe if there's something that ties into a new story or something of interest, then I will read any correlating materials and share links with that. So we're on the second chapter here, which is on, well, our book is New World Order, The Ancient Plan of Secret Societies by William T. Still, and the chapter is also called Ancient Secret Societies. Brilliant. Anyway, we read the first half of this chapter, and we left off on, I suppose it was page 31, and it was dealing with the difference between Luciferianism and Satanism, and Luciferianism being the root religion within the Masonic lodges. It detailed, we read on how there's the layers within Masonic lodges, and so the vast majority of the members are at the lower base of the totem pole here, or pyramid would be a better phrase there. And as far as they know, the vast majority believe it's a Christian organization that does work and beneficial things for society. The original community organizers were these private clubs that did charities, and they were benevolent. Beware of people who claim to be benevolent. So, we left off on that, and so we're going to pick up here as after talking about Lucifer being, the angel of light. According to Webster, Allah Ben Shelley goes on to show that the Masonic motto changes from "to the glory of the great architect of the universe" at the lower levels of Masonry to "glory and love for Lucifer, hatred, hatred, hatred to God, accursed, accursed, accursed." And this is a quote, so of course this is not what disgusts me to even repeat that. And it goes on to quote Bellincelli on the Ten Commandments, according to one French version of Masonry. And the quote is, "It is professed in these societies that all that the Christian God commands is disagreeable to Lucifer, that all that he forbids is, on the contrary, agreeable to Lucifer, that in consequence one must do all that the Christian God forbids, and that one must shun like fire all that he commands." And the verse of scriptures about calling good evil and evil good. I mean, yeah, it's a topsy-turvy religion. It deliberately pulls you in, pretends to be Christian, and then it throws it upside down. And we see this mindset, this backwards or upside down thinking and calling itself as Christian. We see it very strongly in American Christianity today. There's all kinds of New Age movements within Christianity, and they have this topsy-turvy, good is evil, evil is good, and the scriptures says woe unto them. Ultimately God's going to judge them, and in this world, you're free to make decisions and live how you choose, and but you will in eternity. There's going to be consequences. And of course, there's going to be consequences in this life too for the things you choose to do, but the eternal consequences, those are the ones of the most importance. This life is so short. It's just, a drop in the bucket compared to eternity. So, that's where we really want to put our hearts and minds at and concerns with. So anyway, moving on to page 34 here. It should be noted here that some Masons, especially British and American Masons, vehemently deny that they embrace any satanic or Luciferian doctrines. In fact, many claim that French Masonry is bad, while British Masonry and its American derivative is benign. The truth is that all Masons, no matter which country they are in, have to swear to increasingly horrific blood oaths as they ascend through the degrees of initiation. Masons complain bitterly that those oaths are merely ceremonial and meaningless, at least in today's world. If this is so, then why perpetrate them? The similarities between continental and Anglo/American Masonry are so substantial and so well documented, while the demonstrable differences are so few, that at this point it is incumbent on the Masonic fraternity to prove there is a significant difference. Both Lucifer and Satan incite revolution against all forms of authority, husband against wife, child against parent, citizen against government. Rebellion against supposedly unjust authority is the hallmark of Masonry. The Bible, however, teaches obedience, and it paraphrases part of, I believe this is Ephesians chapter 6. Wives must submit to your husband's leadership. Children, obey your parents, and obey every law of your government, those of the king as head of state, and those of the king's offices, for he has sent them to punish all who do wrong and to honor those who do right. Illuminism teaches the opposite of obedience. Actually, before I continue reading this, I just want to say the scriptures doesn't say obey every law of your government. That is a terrible paraphrase of the scriptures. We are to obey God rather than man. Yes, there's a respect. Yes, there's authority. And the scripture says, authority, it comes, God is in control. He's the ultimate authority. And he will dethrone evil kings and wicked leaders as he sees fit. And we are to submit ourselves with respect to laws that are in harmony with Scripture, but if it outlaws true worship, we're not to follow that law. So this paraphrasing is saying every law of government, that's not biblical. Even Daniel, when there was a law that said not to pray to the one true God, but only pray to the king, Daniel broke that law. He didn't pray to the king. He prayed to the one true God. Alright, now we'll carry on. Illuminism teaches the opposite of obedience, revolution. Illuminists are living the sad and ultimate deception of all mankind, believing that man does not need God, does not need obedience. For even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light, therefore it is not surprising that his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their deeds. This ancient struggle between Satan and God for the souls of men has affected every individual and every nation through every period of human history since the Garden of Eden. Yes, that is so true. Where Eve was successfully tempted and deceived by the serpent to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because then she would attain deity. Ye shall surely not die, for then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. It's quoting, of course, what Satan said to Eve. This is the eternal lie that's in every false religion. Oh, you do this, you're not gonna die. I mean, you're gonna attain Godhead. And so this is, part of, and this is the root of this topsy-turvy religion, whether it's Masonic, in the Masonic lodges, in the Illuminism, if it's within Gnosticism, if it's in New Age, if it's in Buddhism even, it's about attaining a certain enlightenment. I believe from my understanding of Islam, it's all about works. It's very works-based, so, obtaining your salvation based on what you do. What's the point of this? It's not to admit that you're that you need a savior, but whether that you can save yourself by becoming like God, by attaining this knowledge, by attaining these works. It goes right back to the Garden of Eden. It is the lie that Satan said to Eve. All the secret societies play on this yearning of all men to seek immortality for themselves or their souls. The Luciferian doctrine promises enlightenment via Lucifer. It promises that man can become a god through secret knowledge passed down through these societies. The ancient Greeks. The basic philosophies of Illuminism turn up in every culture, ancient or modern. Only the names of their gods change. Isis and Osiris and some of the other Egyptian gods mutated into new identities as they pass into different nations and different areas. In ancient Greece and Rome, Isis mutated into a variety of slightly different forms, such as Diana, Athena, Aphrodite, and Venus. Osiris became Zeus, Poseidon, and Mercury. Why is this mythology important? Because the worship of these pagan gods and goddesses still exists. How are the society's secrets kept secure? One of the methods of preserving secrecy in secret societies is the concept of common criminality. Just let that sink in. I think this is very interesting. A prime example of this can be seen in one of the best documented scandals of the pre-Christian era. The cult of Isis flourished in ancient Greece, and her mysteries were, as always, kept by the secret societies. But the proverbial cat got out of the bag when the famous mystery scandal broke in ancient Athens. It seems that a large group of aristocrats conspired to overthrow the Athenian democracy. In order to ensure the secrecy of the operation among the extraordinarily large number of conspirators, a common crime was committed in which each member had to participate. Communal criminality has always been a necessary security measure for the highest mysteries of the secret societies. One night, the conspiring Athenians went out into the city streets armed with hammers and chisels and cut off the genitals of the many statues of the god Hermes gracing their city. In that day, nothing could have been a more public display of discretion and would surely have been dealt with quite harshly. In this way, it was assured that if any member of the group was to betray the conspiracy, he would find himself charged with a crime with numerous influential witnesses testifying against him. The case came to light only because of the public outrage. A thorough investigation was launched, and eventually the conspiratorial web was cracked. The perpetrators were discovered, publicly humiliated during a series of trials, and later exiled from Greece. We have so much craziness going on these days, and even just look through history, there's so much stuff, and it makes me think, I wonder how many of these unsolved crimes or these large group members being involved in one crime has to do with this secret society mentality. And there's something very strong about mob psychology. It's amazing when people get into a group and they feel like they belong. The things that they do because they have a sense of invincibility, because they're part of this larger organization, this mob. People do all kinds of things that they wouldn't do on their own. And if you look at Nazi history, people were brought up, under the Hitler Youth. They thought it was normal, but look back at the generation that gave them the Hitler Youth. They banded together and had this mob mentality. Look at all the parades. That's what they were really about. It wasn't just hurrahing their national background in history and pride. And there was certainly a lot of pride. And pride is the original sin. And you see it within nationalism and the whole idea of nationalism, but it feeds into this mob mentality, mob psychology, group think, being part of this larger something great and bigger than yourself. Anyway, so yeah, secret societies definitely have this mob psychology to them, and the idea of doing something that you're all equally guilty of, and it holds one another accountable in the most disgusting way to hold somebody accountable. You know, you can't walk away from this because we know what you did. And yeah, because they were aristocrats, they would have been credible witnesses against anybody who decided to step out, to act as an individual rather than staying with the group, staying in the club, walking the party line. The next paragraph here is titled Atlantis. Secret societies have existed in most, if not all, nations throughout history. And this is true, especially when you consider priests and mythologies. The priests acted like a secret club, a secret society unto themselves in, I think, every culture around the world since after the flood. Manly Hall claimed that a super-secret society superior to the Masonic order was the backbone of not only the ancient civilization of Greece and later Rome, but also the civilizations of Islam and the Mongol empires. Hall calls this super-secret group the Order of the Illumined Ones, the Order of the Quest, or the Order of the Ancient Philosophers. Even in ancient times, scholars bound themselves with mystic ties into a worldwide fraternity, drawing candidates from all the mystery schools, the Masons, the Rosicrucians, the Kabbalists, and they have in parenthesis, Jewish mystery scholar tradition. And we talked about the Kabbalists in one of our earlier programs, Brother Steve McCool and Sister Kimberly McCool and myself, when we were discussing the nation of Israel. We did touch on Kabbalism, and that in of itself is quite a study. And I think one of the interesting things about this book so far that I've read is that it does tie in these groups that you could read whole books of on themselves, and yet it's not really a very thick book. Ties all of them together in a pretty nice order and easy to follow. Even in ancient times, scholars bound themselves with, I already read that part, and others. These priest-philosophers from Egypt, Greece, India, China, and the rest of the ancient world were formed into a sovereign body to instruct and advise their leaders. Where did this ancient order originate? Hall claimed that it originated in the legendary Atlantis. He claimed that the Atlanteans devised a plan, a great plan, which would guide world events for millennia to come, and that it included a mysterious blueprint of what would later become America. Hall said that ancient Egyptian secret societies inherited this great plan and were well aware of the existence of the landmass in the Western Hemisphere, which we now call America, long before it was discovered, in quotation marks, by Columbus. Hall stated, the explorers who opened the New World operated from a master plan and were agents of rediscovery rather than discoverers. Time will reveal that the continent now known as America was actually discovered and, to a considerable degree, explored more than 1,000 years before the beginning of the Christian era. The true story was in the keeping of the mystery schools, and passed from them to the secret societies of the medieval world. The historic orders of Europe, Asia, and the Near East were in at least irregular communication with the priesthoods of the more advanced Amerindian nations. Plans for the development of the Western Hemisphere were formulated in Alexandria, Mecca, Delhi, and Lhasa, which is in Tibet. long before the most European statesmen were aware of the great utopian program. Hall maintained that the unifying goal of these secret societies was to create a new a new Atlantis in America. Yeah. There is archaeological evidence that indeed there was communications, there was travel, there was trade between the Roman Empire and certain Native American groups. If you look at the Native America, the civilizations, they didn't just come from one group over the land bridge and spread out. No, there was probably 3 or 4 different waves of immigration to America before Columbus, and spreading of civilizations and conquest of the different ancient civilizations in America, building on top of one another. There's It's an interesting history. I personally don't subscribe to the widely taught and accepted evolutionist account of Native American history. And my main objection to it is that it is primarily evolution based. It's not very historical based, and it's not very biblical based. But anyway, moving on, because otherwise I'm not going to have time to get on to this section on Gnosticism, and I really wanted to read that. So, another branch of Illuminism which still survives in Gnosticism. It rose in the 1st and 2nd centuries AD and taught that magical knowledge known as Gnosis was the only path to salvation. One of the ways believers received access to these divine mysteries was through sexual orgies guised as religious rites. The general Gnostic emphasis on knowledge received through magical inspiration naturally led to a contempt for conventional morality, because according to Gnosticism, a man did not reach heaven by leading a good life or through faith, but through possession of Gnosis. A man who received Gnosis had in effect evolved into a god and could not be corrupted by anything he might do. Secure in Godhead, Gnostics seduces their female disciples and indulge all the lusts of the flesh. Some Gnostics said that good and evil were meaningless labels and that the way to perfection was to experience everything. Scholars of today call this experimentalism. It was widely seen in the hippies and flower children of the 1960s, though it is rarely understood in its historical perspective. It is not a large leap from Gnosticism to Satanism. Researcher Richard Cavendish, author of The Black Arts, has written, "All these Gnostic ideas fit into the general pattern of Satanism. Indeed, they largely establish it." Nesta Webster, noted British historian of the 1920s, reported that Gnostic rituals formed the basis of black magic in the Middle Ages, including the glorification of evil, which plays so important a part in the modern revolutionary movement. According to Webster, the role of Gnostics was to reduce perversions to a system by binding men together into secret works under the guise of enlightenment in order to obscure all recognized ideas of morality and religion. Wow, just the concepts of Gnosticism makes me think of the cultural revolutions, and as they said, the hippie children of the 1960s, but we've had, changes in our culture long even before the 60s. So anyway, I'm going to skip on to this next big paragraph, the Illuminati. Popular history texts and encyclopedias generally paint the Illuminati as having its origins in 1776 in Bavaria. However, the origins go back much further. The Illuminati are tied directly through Masonry to the Sun and Isis cults of ancient Egypt. The term Illuminati was used by one early writer, Menendez Pelayo, as early as 1492, and is attributed to a group known as the Alumbrados of Spain. The Alumbrados were said to receive secret knowledge from an unknown higher source, resulting in superior human intelligence. This group was condemned by an edict of the Grand Inquisition in 1623, in what was another battle in the long-running war between the Catholic Church and the secret societies. Some writers claim that a group known as the Illuminated Ones was founded by Joachim of Flores in the 11th century and taught a primitive, supposedly Christian doctrine of poverty and equality. This tactic is disguised Illuminism behind a thin veil of Christianity is now a well-established theme. Later this group is said to have become violent, plundering the rich and thereby discrediting Christianity as a whole. Still, other writers trace the Illuminati to the dreaded Ismailian sect of Islam, also known as the Order of Assassins, founded in 1090 by Hassan Sabbah. This group combined the use of the drug hashish with murder as their main path to illumination. Killing was a mystical experience to this branch of the mystery schools. They not only maintained their control by murder and threats of murder, they believed that the assassin could acquire the gnosis, or soul energy, from the victim. This is the theory behind the human and animal sacrifices of Satanists throughout history. Primitive religions get the same effect by dancing and drum beating. Seeking this form of illumination was the main attraction of drugs like marijuana, hashish, and LSD to teenagers of the 1960s and 1970s. Buddhists can gain the same illumination through sexual rituals known as tantric yoga, or through the different forms of meditation. Witchcraft covens still meet in the nude and participate in group sexual rituals for the same effect. Mass participation in animal sacrifices is another way to scavenge gnosis. The sad fact is that although sex, drugs, dancing, and drum beating are believed to release a lot of gnosis, Satanists believe that sacrifices release more of it than anything else. Such are the dark and sordid machinations of the deluded souls who think their gnosis accumulations and illumination will give them some form of deity or immortality. This is only a thumbnail sketch of the myriad forms illumination has taken up to the 18th century AD. It is important to realize, however, that Illuminism is really the religion of benevolent mythical Lucifer, not Satan. It is disguised as political idealism bent on eradicating religion and monarchies in general, and Christianity in particular, and gaining global control for a commonwealth of nations featuring universal democracy. And no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. Alright, and that brings us to an end to that chapter. And so now we're going to move on again and close with Proverbs. I know it's not a smooth transition to going from reading these ominous, dark sayings and the way Satan works. It can be very weary and depressing on the spirit, and you might wonder, well, why do it? Why study it? Why even look at this? Because these, just for the same reason why you get in politics. Politics is dirty, disgusting, revolting, and wearisome on the spirit. But it's the world that we live in. This is how Satan, he manipulates and he moves around in his tactics, and we need to be alert for his tactics and be prepared for the different people that we come in contact with and how to talk to them and understand where they're coming from and why they see these things that just comes off as absolutely crazy to us. Well, if you understand a little bit of how Satan twists the scriptures, then you're better prepared to unravel it while witnessing to people. And of course, you can't do it just from a head knowledge. You do have to pull out the scriptures and do it with prayer and the Lord's help. And so, with that, we're going to transition to reading our Proverbs of today. So, We are on the 27th proverb. Boast not thyself of tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. Let another man praise thee, and not thine own mouth, a stranger, and not thine own lips. A stone is heavy, and the sand weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than them both. Wrath is cruel, and anger is outrageous, but who is able to stand before envy? Open rebuke is better than secret love. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. The full soul loatheth in honeycomb, but to the hungry soul every bitter thing is sweet. As a bird that wandereth from her nest, so is a man that wandereth from his place. Ointment and perfume rejoice the heart, so doth the sweetness of a man's friend by hearty counsel. Thine own friend and thy father's friend forsake not, neither go into thy brother's house in the day of thy calamity. For better is a neighbor that is near than a brother far off. My son, be wise, and make my heart glad, that I may answer him that reproached me. A prudent man foreseeth the evil, and hideth himself, but the simple pass on, and are punished. Take his garment that is surety for a stranger, and take a pledge of him for a strange woman. He that blesseth his friend with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, it shall be counted a curse to him. A continual dropping in a very rainy day, and a contentious woman are alike. Whosoever hideth her hideth the wind, and the ointment of his right hand which bewrayeth itself. Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. Whoso keepeth the fig tree shall eat the fruit thereof, so he that waiteth on his master shall be honored. As in water face answereth to face, so the heart of man to man. Hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. As the finding pot of silver and the furnace for gold, so is a man in his praise. Though thou shouldest spray a fool in a mortar among wheat with a pistol, yet will not his foolishness depart from him. Be thou diligent to know the state of thy flock, and look well to thy herds. For riches are not for ever, and doth the crown endure to every generation? The hay appeareth, and the tender grass showeth itself, and herb of the mountains are gathered. The lambs are for thy clothing, and the goats are the price of the field. And thou shalt have goat's milk enough for thy food, for the food of thy household, and for the maintenance for thy maidens.